Dr. Jan Pohl, a veterinarian known for his no-nonsense approach and uncanny ability to connect with animals, spent a lifetime immersed in the mud, fur, and chaos of his craft. He became a household name not because of grandeur or flair, but because of his raw, unfiltered dedication to his work. The man who once joked about having more cow manure on his boots than polish in his life was leaving behind more than memories and a TB legacy. As his life quietly came to an end, he left his family a fortune so staggering it reduced them to tears, not out of greed or surprise, but because it encapsulated the sheer weight of his journey and the depth of his love for his work and those around him. But before we proceed further, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. Dr. Pohl's wealth wasn't merely monetary, though his financial legacy was significant. The fortune he amassed was a mosaic of values, lessons, and memories that reflected the richness of a life lived with purpose. His wealth was as layered and nuanced as the man himself, born in the Netherlands, raised with modest means, and deeply rooted in a practical worldview. He often remarked that his wealth wasn't in his pocket, but in the relationships he built with his clients, his family, and every creature that walked or waddled into his clinic. His rise to fame was an unintentional side effect of his authenticity. Long before cameras followed his every move, Dr. Pohl was trudging through muddy barns in the middle of winter, fixing prolapsed uteruses in cows and performing surgeries on dogs with a sense of urgency that never wavered. When the idea of a television show documenting his veterinary escapades first surfaced, he didn't see himself as a star. "I'm just a farm vet," he once said with a shrug, a phrase that would stick with him as both a mantra and a truth. Yet audiences were captivated. There was something magnetic about his grit and humor, whether he was wrestling a stubborn goat or explaining the intricacies of a surgery in his thick Dutch accent. It was impossible to look away. That grit translated into financial success, though he never flaunted it. Dr. Pohl wasn't the type to buy flashy cars or extravagant homes. His pleasures were simple and often practical. His clinic, a modest building in rural Michigan, became a symbol of his grounded approach to life. He invested not in grandeur, but in people, particularly his staff and family, ensuring they had opportunities he once dreamed of. His fortune was carefully cultivated over years of hard work, not by design but as a byproduct of his unwavering commitment. Dr. Pohl's family, gathered to hear the details of his estate, was overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what he left behind. This wasn't about the zeros in a bank account. It was the thoughtfulness with which everything was arranged. He left letters, each one penned in his unmistakable style, direct, heartfelt, and tinged with humor. To his children, he passed down not just money, but a roadmap of principles, hard work, resilience, and the importance of finding joy in even the messiest of moments. To his grandchildren, there were handwritten notes reminding them that success is measured not in accolades, but in the number of lives you touch. Perhaps the most moving part of his legacy was the clinic itself. Dr. Pohl had often joked that he'd probably die with his stethoscope still around his neck, and though he eventually did retire, his clinic remained the beating heart of his professional life. He ensured its future was secure, entrusting it to a team he had mentored for years. His staff, some of whom had been with him through thick and thin, found themselves not just employees but stewards of a legacy that spanned decades. The clinic wasn't just a business, it was a sanctuary, a place where compassion and practicality intersected in ways that often defied explanation. The emotional weight of his passing wasn't just felt by his immediate family. Dr. Pohl's influence stretched far beyond his rural Michigan community. Fans from around the world, many of whom had never set foot on a farm, felt a kinship with the affable veterinarian. His show, The Incredible Dr. Pohl, had turned him into an unlikely global icon. People who had no idea how to milk a cow or treat a colicky horse suddenly found themselves fascinated by the life of a country vet. Through their screens, they saw not just the work, but the man behind it. Someone who faced every challenge with humor, ingenuity, and an unwavering sense of purpose. Humor was a cornerstone of his character, and it showed even in how he handled the less glamorous aspects of his work. Dr. Pohl could crack a joke about cow dung mid-surgery, his thick accent adding an extra layer of charm to the absurdity. His ability to laugh at life's messes, literal and figurative, was one of his greatest gifts. That humor softened the sharp edges of his work, making even the most harrowing moments bearable for those around him. His family often joked that if Dr. Pohl could turn a calf being born in a blizzard into a funny story, he could probably make taxes entertaining too. What set Dr. Pohl apart wasn't just his skill but his humility. He was never one to pat himself on the back. Instead, he saw his success as a team effort, always quick to credit his wife, Diane, for her unwavering support. Diane was his rock, the one who managed the clinic's chaos when Dr. Pole was out wrestling a steer or stitching up a stray dog. Together, they built not just a business, but a life that revolved around their shared values of hard work and kindness. When the time came to distribute his estate, it was clear that Dr. Pole had thought of everything. He didn't just leave money, he left tools for his family to thrive. To his children, he passed on stories of his youth, written down in a series of notebooks he had kept over the years. These weren't polished memoirs, but raw accounts of his early days, learning to milk cows as a boy, struggling through veterinary school, and the countless adventures that shaped his outlook. His family later remarked that these stories were worth more than any sum of money, a priceless window into the mind of a man who had lived fully and without regret. The financial side of his fortune was equally remarkable, though not in the way one might expect. Dr. Pole had quietly invested over the years, not in stocks or bonds, but in things he believed had lasting value: land, education, and people. These were the pillars of his wealth. His property holdings, modest yet significant, were spread across the rural landscapes he had always called home. He left funds earmarked for scholarships to help aspiring veterinarians, ensuring that his love for the profession would live on in future generations. As his family sat with the weight of his legacy, the tears weren't just for the man they had lost, but for the profound way in which he had planned for their futures. Dr. Pole's fortune wasn't a gilded treasure chest, but a testament to a life well lived, filled with purpose and humor. He had always said that his goal wasn't to die rich, but to leave the world a little better than he found it. In the end, he achieved that and so much more. Dr. Pole's legacy was not confined to the clinic or the wealth he accumulated, but lived on in the way he inspired those who knew him. His family's tears were not of sorrow alone, but of overwhelming gratitude and awe at how his life had unfolded into something far greater than anyone could have imagined. For a man who spent much of his time with his hands elbowed deep in the everyday grit of veterinary work, he had quietly woven together a life that bridged practicality and a deep, enduring love for his craft and his people. In those moments of reflection, his family realized that his greatest gift wasn't the money or the properties, but the enduring example he set. He demonstrated that success was built in the small, relentless acts of care, patching up injured animals, mentoring young veterinarians, and showing up every day ready to face whatever chaos awaited. His fortune was a tangible reminder of the lives he had touched and the lessons he had left behind. As they shared stories, laughed through their tears, and felt the weight of his absence, they understood one thing with absolute clarity. Dr. Pole's legacy wasn't just what he left, it was how he lived. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We thrive on your feedback, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep discovering and stay tuned.